The strictest order of monks in the Catholic Church are called the Carthusians. And Carthusians are semi-hermits, meaning they live in independent cells that are joined to a larger mother house. The Carthusians, they come together 3 times a day, but they only talk once a week. Each monk has to cook for himself, has to cut his own wood for the furnace in his room in order to keep warm during the winter. And they also have a perpetual abstinence from meat. In 1984, a film director asked the Carthusians for permission to film them. That's where we got this video footage from. And in 1984, when he asked permission, the Carthusians responded. They said, "It's too soon. Could you wait perhaps 10 or 15 years?" So that's a sense of their pace of life, their sense of time. And so from 1984 until the finished product, it was 21 years. And just seeing their way of life, and you hear about it, something very attractive to us. That sense of lack of distraction, the sense of there's no hurry here, the focus, the absolute pursuit of God alone. Very few of us are going to be called to that way of life, but all of us are called to have that kind of clarity and that focus, that holiness. This is what Jesus is offering us today, an expansion, what I call an expansion of our horizons. So often our horizons are very limited. They're very short-sighted. And what Jesus today wants to do is just lift up our eyes. There's so much more to which he's calling us. The first reading records the prophet Jeremiah saying this to God. He says, "O Lord, you have enticed me, and I was enticed." This is a famously difficult sentence to interpret, so there are many translations. Another translation says, "You have deceived me, and I was deceived." Lord, you deceived me. And now the Carthusians, the translation that they like, they say, "You seduced me, and I let myself be seduced." So what's the context of this, of Jeremiah saying this to God is, basically Jeremiah had heard a call from God to go tell the people their sin, something really good. But what happened is the people, they arrest him, they beat him, and then they throw him into the stocks. And Jeremiah is now praying to the Lord, "You tricked me." But Jeremiah still knows that God is good. And if you look at the end of his prayer, he says this, he expresses trust. "But the Lord is with me like a dread warrior. To you I have committed my cause." Sing to the Lord, praise the Lord. And so in the whole context, when Jeremiah says to God, "You seduced me, and I let myself be seduced," there's an element, there's a sweetness to the call. There was still a sweetness, and he willingly surrendered. The Carthusians, they love this line, they love this sentence, and they use it a lot in their spirituality because they talk about the seduction of the absolute. That's a term, the seduction of the absolute referring to Jesus. And they say, there is nothing with which we can compare him, and he takes hold of our hearts at once. So the interesting thing about the Carthusians is, even though they're so rigorous, they're very romantic. In their writings, they use romantic terms like setting out on a quest, a dream, intimacy with God. And so Jesus is alluring us to a higher life today. And I want to go through 5 allurements that he does in our life. And we're going to start with the most human. And the first allurement is that of self-improvement. Jesus will draw us to a life of self-improvement. Okay, so a lot of us have already experienced this allurement in our life. So we've experienced at a certain time in our life, we're really complacent, we're really comfortable. But then we realize, we're really not hitting our potential, really not doing much with our life. We're very soft. We're not that strong, we can't handle that much adversity. And then you start realizing, yeah, I'm meant for more. And then comes a grace, this allurement to self-improvement. And you start realizing, I want to take responsibility for my life. And then you stop blaming other people. That feels really good. You stop blaming your situation. You stop blaming your family. You stop blaming the world. And whenever you hear this call to self-improvement, it's really an echo of Jesus' call to perfection. And life changes. And whenever I meet someone who's embraced that allurement, they come alive. Their life is so much more bright. And they can start being resilient to so many bad things in their life. Number 2 is the allurement to meaning, to a life of meaning. So let's see a picture of Jacques and Raïs Maritain. When they were 18 and 17 years old, respectively, at the University of Paris, the intellectual climate, philosophical climate was atheism and materialism. And that can't give you meaning in life. But both of them were very sincere, intellectually honest, and they were aware of this human hunger for justice. You need justice, right? But at the same time, there's also so much injustice in the world. There's so much suffering. So these two, this hunger and this reality, demands meaning. And so they made a pact with themselves. They said, we're going to give ourselves 1 year to find meaning, and if we don't, we'll commit suicide. And now, thank God, they kept up their search, and they met other intellectuals who were seeking truth, asking hard questions, and looking for answers. And then they met some Catholic intellectuals who were living the faith and who had really had a relationship with Jesus. And so Jacques and Raïs, they met Jesus, and then they were baptized a year later, and they went on to be very influential philosophers and writers. All of us sometimes experience a boredom in our life. And boredom is always the opposite of meaning, because whenever we're bored, it means there's no meaning in what we're doing. At least we don't see it, right? And as soon as whatever you're doing, if you can inject meaning into it, it's no longer boring, right? And so if we can discover a meaning in our life, and it has to be a meaning not given by ourselves, because if it's a meaning given by ourselves, you can lose it. It's very precarious. But if you can discover a meaning given by God, you can never lose that. And then everything in life starts to make sense. And then you can put up with all kinds of suffering. The third is the allurement to generosity, to service. The Canadian doctor, Andrew Simone, he graduated from Queen's and Harvard. But in 1975, he felt a call from God to change his life, and I'd like to show now a 2-minute clip.
My name is Andrew Simone. In 1975, my wife and I changed our lives. We felt the call from God to dedicate our life serving the poor. We gave away all our savings, life insurance, television, cars. We felt the call to become servants. So we brought in 24 foster children. We divided all the money we earned to 6 charities. We decided that we would only use $40 a week to feed our large family. We made it known that if anyone had celebrations or reasons why they had extra food, we'd be very grateful if they would bring it to us. Mother Teresa came to Toronto in 1986, and she said to us, Dr. Simone and Joan, people think my sisters and I can take care of all the poor. We can't. You and your wife have the gift of helping the poor. Use the gift. So we started Canadian Food for Children. We ship to 19 countries. Basically, we have to find countries that we can get the shipments through customs without any trouble. In a normal year, we ship over 5 million kilos. And so we've always ran the charity without any paid executive directors or directors. So anyone that gives us $1, this provides 20 meals for the poor. When I went to a little Catholic school in Toronto, one day they taught us there was a saint that I think his name was Saint Gerard. And that day I said, I want to be a saint. And so I feel that this world is just of the world. and I have faith that one day there is heaven. And so I want to use every ounce of my energy to help the poor. I think the most important thing is to make sure that my brother is Jesus, because I may be intelligent, but Jesus is everything.
Saw this video. And this parishioner is an executive. He said, "That's it. What more is there? That's how life should be, right?" And he got a taste of this expansion of horizons, and he started realizing, yeah, I could use my skills and my earnings to live like that. Number 4 is the allurement to ministry. There are lots of ways of serving God, but one of the most powerful ways of serving God is to do it directly in the pastoral mission of the church, because there's no more important mission than bringing people to Jesus. So I want to let you all know that we just hired someone full-time. Her name is Jackie Chow. Some of you know her. So Jackie is now our director of discipleship. And that means she's going to be focusing on our disciples in our parish who want to grow in holiness. She wants to help them grow to become saints. And then she wants to launch them out on mission. So she's going to be in charge of overall of faith studies and Marian consecration, called and gifted, our chapel here, and then intercessory prayer ministry. And Jackie has left years of teaching behind, teaching in a Catholic school, because she felt this, she comes alive. Whenever she helps someone come alive in their faith, there's nothing better for her than that. That's the allurement of ministry. And finally, the allurement to authentic love. Authentic love. There's a man named Christopher West. Christopher West, a layman. He's one of the most popular speakers and authors about theology of the body. Theology of the body is St. John Paul II's writings on human sexuality and God's plan for it. And Christopher West tells this story about when he was 19 years old at a Catholic college, he overheard a date rape. So I presume he's in the dorm, and this is what he said during a talk. He overheard this man forcing himself on this woman, and the woman was resisting. And she said, "I don't want to, but I will only if you love me." And the man said, "I love you, I love you." And he kept on forcing himself. And Christopher West said he should have beaten the you-know-what out of that guy, but he didn't. But that shocked him. That whole incident just rattled him. He started wondering, what would lead a person to use another person sexually? Starts examining himself, his own attitudes, and he realized even though he hadn't done what that man did, his attitude was the same. So basically, he had used lots of women, and he currently was using his girlfriend sexually. Goes into this deeper crisis, very angry at God, searching. He comes across St. John Paul II's writings, Theology of the Body, and he starts understanding, oh my goodness, God's plan for sexuality and marriage is not just about pleasure, it's about joy, it's about intimacy, it's actually about launching us to God. It's so good. And he's now dedicated his whole life to sharing theology of the body. And some of you have heard this, and if you hear Christopher West speak about God's plan for sexuality, it will change your life, because your relationships start changing, your behavior, your expectations start changing. It's so beautiful. If ever you've used someone sexually, if you've ever been used, or you have a broken heart, or you've felt empty in a relationship, you're hungering, just like I am, for God's plan for human sexuality. And the beautiful thing is he can redeem all of our pain. So beautiful. Some people have sometimes asked, why should we listen to Pope John Paul II? He's never had sex. And one good answer is because he's not as broken as the rest of us. Now, he is broken, but not as much as the rest of us. Because all of us are so broken in our sexuality. We're so wounded from our sexual past. And so there's good reason to listen to this man who has so much experience about love. And so some of us have felt that when you encounter the theology of the body, your heart starts feeling full. And your relationships in life change. They're so much better. So these 5 allurements that Jesus does in our life, you see, there's something more. He's expanding our horizons. And today, just after Mass, if I could just ask you when I do the online chat, which of these 5 allurements, does any of them speak to your heart? Could you just let me know, of the 5, is it the call to self-improvement, a life of meaning, generosity and service, ministry, or is it to authentic love? Just help me vote. Throw it out there right now before you forget. This is the last Sunday of August, so last Sunday in our Sabbath summer. It's time to slow down and reflect. We've been blessed in recent years with a few vocations to consecrated life. First guy was Andrew MacDonald. He joined Westminster Abbey Benedictine monks. He's now called Brother Isidore. And then last year, Natalie Ewan joined the Franciscan Sisters of the Eucharist in Connecticut. And now we're going to say goodbye next week to Dana Augustin. Dana's also going to Connecticut next week to join Natalie. And I've invited her now just to share her vocation story and this allurement of Jesus to the fullness of life.
Good morning, everyone. Throughout my high school years, I struggled with my faith and relationship with God. Although I grew up in a Catholic household, I attended a public high school where I got to encounter people of different ethnic, cultural, and religious backgrounds. While some of my friends were Catholic, the majority of them were not practicing, and the rest of my friends were atheists. Soon, I didn't enjoy going to Mass on Sundays. It felt like it was just an obligation for me. I zoned out during the homilies and Gospels, and I would sometimes leave Mass when I got really bored. The mask I wore to impress my friends became the mask I wore to hide from God. Soon, I started seeing my relationship with God like he was just some toy on a shelf. I knew he was there, and I still believed in him. Yet, I only picked him up or talked with him whenever I needed something in my life. Then, in 2015, my mom went through a reconversion in her faith. This turning point in my mom's life inspired me to reopen my own relationship with God. So, after participating in CCO faith studies, I was honestly amazed to find myself at a deeper connection with my faith and relationship with God. And soon, with Father Justin's guidance, I began removing my mask and opening my heart to the love of God. But then I had to put that mask back on. Once again, I found myself struggling to please others, especially my friends. I felt jealous that all my friends were having fun, doing things like dating and going to parties. In comparison to their lives, I saw my life with Jesus as dull and boring. So I left Jesus again to follow my friends' lifestyles. I began to agree with my friends' views, even if it went against Catholic teachings. I would join them at late-night parties and come home feeling really frustrated at my family. I also got into a relationship that went against all my values and my faith. I became so self-conscious and insecure to the point that I started to realize all these things did not satisfy and fulfill the deepest desires in my heart. I felt angry, depressed, and alone. But even in my anger at God, I managed to change my mindset to, God has a plan for me. And once this took its root, many things changed and opened up. I began finding time to take care of myself, and I did this by talking to Jesus in adoration. The more I spent time with him, the more I realized that even though I had felt so hopeless, there was one person in my life who still gave me hope: God. He was with me through it all, the good, the bad, and even the ugliest of sufferings. These last 7 months, I spent building a relationship with the Franciscan Sisters of the Eucharist here in Vancouver. In these short months with the community, my love for God grew in ways I never could have imagined. I was able to experience what it was like to live in a community with the sisters. Every time I visited them, I always felt a great sense of joy and peace in my heart. My visits have opened me to a greater love for religious life and the faith, and this has inspired me to further my discernment. Next week, I'll be taking the next step called prepostulancy to allow me the opportunity to live in a relationship with the Franciscan Sisters of the Eucharist and to continue to walk with God and the community in deepening my discernment journey. In high school, I put on a mask to feel wanted and desired by my friends. But now, I have removed that mask for God, who wants and desires me for who I truly am. To finish off, I'd like to share a beautiful quote from Henry Nouwen's book, The Return of the Prodigal Son. God is looking for you. He will go anywhere to find you. He loves you. He wants you home. He cannot rest unless he has you with him. Please keep me in your prayers as I enter into this new chapter of my discernment, and please know of my prayers for each and every one of you and for our parish community as a whole. Thank you, and God bless.